California's largest inland body of water sits 200 feet below sea level in the middle of the desert, and it's completely artificial. The Salton Sea covers 400 square miles of what should be barren wasteland, but this massive lake exists purely because of human error, one of the most spectacular engineering accidents in American history. Looking at the Salton Sea today, you'd never guess this seemingly permanent geographical feature didn't exist just over a century ago. The shimmering water stretches to the horizon like an inland ocean, complete with beaches, fish, and migrating birds. Yet this entire ecosystem emerged from a catastrophic mistake that took 2 years to fix and forever changed Southern California's landscape. To understand how we accidentally created California's largest lake, we need to start with the land itself. The Salton Sea sits in something called the Salton Trough, a massive geological depression that's been slowly forming for millions of years. Picture the San Andreas Fault system literally pulling the Earth apart. That's what created this below sea level basin in the first place. Over time, sediment from the Colorado River has been filling this depression, creating layers that now reach an astounding 21,000 feet thick near the Mexican border. This wasn't always empty desert. For thousands of years, the Colorado River would periodically change course and flood this basin, creating a massive ancient lake called Lake Cahuilla. At its peak, around 1500 AD, Lake Cahuilla was 26 times larger than today's Salton Sea. But rivers are fickle things. When the Colorado River would shift its delta due to sediment buildup, it would redirect toward the Gulf of California instead, leaving the basin to slowly evaporate back into desert. Native Americans witnessed these cycles for over 12,000 years, building villages around the lake when it filled and following other water sources when it dried up. Archaeological evidence shows hundreds of sites throughout the region, revealing sophisticated societies that adapted to this rhythm of flood and drought. The last time Lake Cahuilla completely dried up was around 1580, leaving behind visible shorelines on nearby mountains that you can still see today. By the late 1800s, American settlers had arrived with bigger ambitions than simply adapting to natural cycles. They looked at the Colorado River flowing past this fertile valley and saw opportunity. Why let all that water rush to the ocean when it could transform the Imperial Valley into agricultural paradise? The California Development Company had a plan to dig irrigation canals and bring river water to the desert. Now here's where the story gets interesting, and where historians actually disagree about when our accidental sea really began forming. The traditional story focuses on 1905, but recent scholarship suggests the Salton Sea actually started forming 4 years earlier, in May 1901, when irrigation water first began flowing into the basin through something called the Alamo Canal. This distinction matters because it changes how we think about what happened next. Was the Salton Sea born from agricultural runoff that slowly accumulated, or from a dramatic engineering disaster? The answer is probably both. The California Development Company's irrigation system was, to put it charitably, poorly designed. They cut corners on construction and ignored basic engineering principles about flood control. Charles Rockwood, one of the key figures behind the project, made decisions that some historians have called gross negligence, though others argue he was simply working with the technology and knowledge available at the time. Everything came to a head in 1905. Heavy rainfall and snowmelt swelled the Colorado River beyond anything the makeshift canal system could handle. The river broke through the poorly constructed levees and began carving 2 entirely new channels, the New River flowing west and the Alamo River flowing east, each stretching about 60 miles into the Salton Basin. Imagine nearly the entire Colorado River suddenly changing course and pouring into a desert depression for 2 solid years. That's exactly what happened. The torrent of water was so powerful and continuous that it completely transformed the landscape, submerging towns, railroads, and farmland under what became a massive inland sea. The town of Salton, a Southern Pacific Railroad siding, disappeared completely underwater. The New Liverpool Salt Company's facilities were submerged. Most tragically, nearly half of the Torres Martinez Desert Cahuilla Indian Reservation was flooded, forcing indigenous families to pack their belongings and flee to higher ground in the mountains. These weren't just statistics, they were entire communities watching their world literally sink beneath the waves. The Southern Pacific Railroad, which had significant investments in the region, finally stepped in to help fix the disaster. It took them until February 11, 1907, to successfully close the breach and redirect the Colorado River back to its original course. By then, the damage was done, or rather, the creation was complete. The resulting Salton Sea covered 400 square miles and sat 195 feet below sea level. But here's the thing that makes this story even more remarkable. Without continuous water input, this accidental lake should have evaporated completely by around 1917. The fact that it still exists today is due to another human intervention, agricultural runoff. As farming expanded throughout the Imperial and Coachella valleys, irrigation water carrying fertilizers, pesticides, and salt began draining into the Salton Sea. This agricultural runoff has maintained the lake's water level for over a century, creating an entirely artificial ecosystem that's become crucial habitat for millions of migrating birds along the Pacific Flyway. The irony is profound. We accidentally created California's largest lake through engineering failure, then accidentally preserved it through agricultural pollution. The Salton Sea exists in a constant state of artificial life support, dependent on human activity to survive. But this human-made ecosystem has developed its own complex ecology. Fish were introduced and thrived for decades. Millions of birds, pelicans, cormorants, egrets, terns made the Salton Sea a critical stopover on their migration routes. For a time, it actually attracted more visitors than Yosemite National Park, earning the nickname California's Riviera. The geological history adds another layer of wonder to this story. The sediment beneath the Salton Sea tells the tale of millions of years of earth movement and river deposits. Scientists can read the layers like pages in a book, seeing evidence of ancient earthquakes, climate changes, and the gradual formation of Southern California itself. What makes the Salton Sea's creation particularly fascinating is how it mirrors the natural cycles that occurred here for millennia, just compressed into human timescales. Where Lake Cahuilla took decades or centuries to fill and drain through natural river diversions, humans accomplished the same transformation in just 2 years through engineering accident. The debate among historians about whether the sea formed in 1901 or 1905 reflects something deeper about how we define creation itself. Was it the first trickle of diverted irrigation water or the dramatic flood that completed the transformation? Perhaps both moments matter. The slow beginning and the catastrophic acceleration that turned agricultural experiment into geographical reality. Today, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife and the Salton Sea Authority monitor this accidental ecosystem, trying to manage the consequences of our unintended creation. The sea faces new challenges, declining water levels, increasing salinity, and toxic algae blooms, all stemming from the same human interventions that created and sustained it. Standing on the shores of the Salton Sea today, you're witnessing the physical manifestation of human ambition, accident, and adaptation. This isn't just a lake, it's a monument to our species' capacity to fundamentally alter landscapes, sometimes intentionally, sometimes not, but always with consequences that ripple forward through generations. The Salton Sea reminds us that in our eagerness to control and redirect nature, we sometimes create entirely new natures instead. What began as agricultural irrigation became geological accident, became ecological reality. In trying to bring the Colorado River to the Imperial Valley, we instead brought the valley to the river, creating California's most unlikely sea in the process. So the next time someone asks why there's a sea in the middle of California's desert, you can tell them it's there because, over a century ago, some engineers cut corners on an irrigation project and accidentally redirected an entire river for 2 years. Sometimes the most spectacular geographical features aren't the result of million-year geological processes, but simply what happens when human plans meet uncooperative reality. The Salton Sea stands as proof that even our mistakes can reshape the world in ways we never imagined.